World War II was not only a clash of massive armies and industrial firepower, it was also a war of ingenuity. Across frozen forests, bombed-out cities, deserts and jungles, soldiers frequently ran out of proper weapons, ammunition, or supplies. When that happened, survival depended on creativity. Ordinary, everyday objects were transformed into deadly tools, improvised defenses and psychological weapons. These hacks were not born in laboratories but in trenches, prison camps, and resistance hideouts, often under extreme pressure. Here are 9 of the most unusual and astonishing weapon hacks World War II soldiers and fighters made from common items, revealing how desperation fueled innovation. One of the most famous improvised weapons of World War II was the Molotov cocktail. Soldiers and resistance fighters used ordinary glass bottles filled with gasoline, alcohol, or oil, stuffed with cloth rags. When ignited and thrown, these makeshift incendiaries became terrifying anti-tank and anti-infantry weapons. They were especially effective against lightly armored vehicles and could immobilize tanks by setting engines or vision ports on fire. Simple, cheap, and devastating, they proved that even a bottle could become a battlefield equalizer. In situations where standard grenades were unavailable, soldiers modified tin cans, often food cans, by filling them with explosives, scrap metal, nails, or shrapnel. These homemade fragmentation devices exploded outward, turning harmless kitchen waste into lethal weapons. Resistance groups across occupied Europe relied heavily on these improvised bombs for ambushes and sabotage, particularly against supply depots and patrols. Razor blades, sewing needles, and bits of wire were used to create crude but effective traps. Placed at ankle height in tall grass, stairwells, or narrow hallways, these traps could slash tendons or severely wound unsuspecting enemies. Though not always fatal, they slowed advances, caused panic, and forced enemies to move cautiously, buying precious time for defenders or escapees. In prisoner of war camps and close quarters combat, soldiers sometimes filled socks with soap bars, stones, or metal scraps. These improvised clubs could incapacitate an enemy silently and quickly. The simplicity made them ideal for situations where firearms would reveal a position. One strike could knock an opponent unconscious without firing a single bullet. When blades dulled or broke, soldiers repaired and enhanced them using scrap metal, files, and even vehicle parts. Some welded extra edges or sharpened broken fragments to create jagged, brutal cutting tools. These modified weapons were especially common among guerrilla fighters who had limited access to standardized equipment but unlimited motivation. Steel helmets were sometimes repurposed as containers for explosives. Filled with detonators, gunpowder, or captured enemy explosives, they became powerful blast devices. Because helmets could hold larger explosive loads than standard grenades, they were used in defensive positions, dropped into bunkers, or rolled into enemy trenches. Using wire, springs, and salvaged mechanical parts, soldiers created improvised tripwire systems. When triggered, these devices detonated explosives or fired bullets from captured weapons. Though crude, they were effective at night, in forests, or along narrow paths, forcing enemies to slow their advance and constantly fear unseen danger. Broken bottles, plates, and ceramics were embedded into explosive devices or traps. Unlike metal, glass shards often did not show up on X-rays, making wounds especially dangerous and difficult to treat. This tactic was particularly feared, as even non-lethal hits could lead to severe infections or long-term injuries. Sometimes, the weapon wasn't real at all. Soldiers carved rifles from wood, painted pipes to resemble machine guns, or arranged logs to look like artillery positions. These decoys fooled enemy reconnaissance, drew fire away from real positions, and created the illusion of strength where there was none. In World War II, fear and confusion were weapons as powerful as bullets. These improvised weapons didn't replace factory-made arms, but they filled deadly gaps. They allowed resistance movements to fight occupying forces, helped prisoners escape, and gave outnumbered soldiers a fighting chance. More importantly, they reveal a deeper truth of World War II. Innovation thrives under pressure. When survival was on the line, soldiers didn't wait for supplies. They adapted.